Jason, how many years have you been doing 40 Under 40 now?
Probably more than 10, so probably 12 or 15 years. Loretta Seaman, who's West Des Moines icon, obviously, she was the founding matron of the 40 Under 40, and when she left to do her own thing, she passed it off to me. So I don't know exactly. It's probably 15 years now.
And how much does somebody have to pay to become a 40 Under 40, Jason? Just want to...
That would be zero.
Okay. All right. Just want to
You
make
don't
sure.
even have to buy a business record membership. Although we like that, that is not a criteria that we require.
So Jason helps facilitate the award nomination. So he sees the good, the bad, and he sees what the judges ultimately look at. And so, Jason, I don't know if you want to start off and give just a little bit of an overview on 40 Under 40 and how it started, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So we'll give you some of the background. This is our 22nd year, so we have 840 40 Under 40s right now. When it started, it was something that other business journals and other markets were doing, and as with a lot of the things that the business record in Des Moines has done, we learned from our peers, and we said we have a great group of talent in Central Iowa, so we should do this too. And actually, there was a little bit of concern after the first or second year, is it sustainable? Is Des Moines a big enough city that we would continue to have a bunch of great applicants every year? And the good news is that we average between 190 and a little over 200 nominees every year. And I think the talent pool is only getting stronger, which makes the judges' jobs even harder. So once I took over, we kind of changed the way the judging process worked. Before, it was if you were in the class of 2020, you'd be selecting the class of 2021. So it was a potential pool of 40 judges, and then it was whoever could work it into their schedule. When I took over, I decided that it should be open to anyone who's ever been a 40 Under 40. So we broadened the pool of potential judges. And what that means now for any of you that are thinking of being or want to be nominated or have been nominated in the past is there are judges that range in age from their late 50s to as old as 60 if they were 39 when the first class came in, all the way down to whoever the youngest one was the previous year, which might be in the mid to late 20s. So we have a wide range of life experiences that they're bringing to the table when they're looking at the applications, and I think that's good. So these are people that know what it takes to be involved in the community and make an impact, and know what it takes to make an impact on a particular nonprofit organization or the city that they live in. And so the more divergent views, the better.
So Jason, some folks might not necessarily know what happens if you are selected, what the kind of process looks like. You don't have to go through every step, but just in general, why is it that somebody is, when they're selected, what kind of happens after that spot?
All right, so if you get picked, the very first thing that happens is you get a phone call from me, which usually most people don't even remember it was me that called because they're super excited. And then we hand it off and the real communication starts. We try to over communicate, so we send a lot of emails with a lot of details, but it gives everybody a written record of what's going to happen next. Then we share that information with our editorial team. So someone from our editorial staff, it gets in touch with you and sends out, we have kind of a form they fill out, and they ask some standard questions every time, some of which will appear in print. In the past, in the pre-COVID days, we would have an event where we would get together with the honorees and the sponsors. You'd bring a mentor or somebody that you look up to, and we would do a photo shoot. So we would have kind of a party built around the need to take 40 individual portraits of all the honorees, and then it would become time for the event. So we would have an event out in, usually it's been in West Des Moines with about 700 of our closest friends coming to honor all the people that got selected. So it's there's a lot of moving parts to make it all happen, and a lot of different pieces of our team are involved, but we've done it enough times that we try to make it as easy as possible for the honorees to feel that glow and the respect that they've got in the community without making it super hard to check all the boxes.
So one of the things that our goal is with 40 Under 40 is to help elevate folks in the community that are doing great things. A lot of times, business executive folks that are in the CEOs, folks that are in the C-suite, they don't necessarily always have the opportunities to connect in with younger folks, and they're always looking for board members. They're always looking for people to involve in different initiatives. And so our goal through 40 Under 40 is not only are you honored, but then we're taking that profile, we're sharing that through social, we're sharing it in the business record. It's in all our daily e-newsletters as well. So it's a really good opportunity for the folks that are selected then to be, I'd say, gobbled up for different board opportunities, different things in the community that somebody can see your skills that they could be benefiting from in some fashion. And so that's what we often see. We often see once people are selected, they also end up getting recruited very heavily because they learn what type of people these folks are and how involved they are in the community. So it's a real honor when folks are able to get it, and it's a lot of fun for us being able to put them on display in a way that shows the talent in the community that we have too. So Jason, you want to talk a little bit about the nomination process itself?
Sure. So the nomination process starts on December 1st. You can go to business record and the number40.com, and the application will be there. That runs through, this year it'll run through January 8th at noon. Don't be late, because I get really grumpy if people are late and I don't take them. Well, I take them if they're a few minutes late, but don't tell anybody that. But anyway, so the applications are due the second Friday always of January. The nomination process then goes into the judging. So they're going to look at the judges volunteer to come in, and they're going to be judging you based on equal parts community or career achievement and community involvement. And the community involvement piece we kind of leave purposely vague, because these people all are involved in the community. That's how they got selected, so they know what it looks like. So one person might say, I want to see a big long laundry list of volunteer opportunities that they take advantage of and boards they serve on. Somebody else might say, well, they're involved in 3 things, but they really make a huge impact on the group. Neither is the right or the wrong answer. It's really up to how the judge filters it. And then they're selecting, they don't have a minimum or maximum number they need to select. They just select the people that they think are worthy of being honored. And they're doing it completely separate from anybody else. So each judge has an individual packet of about 25 nominations to look at, because we found if we try to have them do, say, all 200, we get 0 volunteers. So they look at a small bite-sized piece of the overall picture. We have 60 or 70 judges usually on average, and it's really their opinion. They're looking based on the criteria we give them, and they're not trying to find 8 people in their package. They're looking to find maybe only the 1 or 2 best, or maybe it's 10 best. But what we always tell them is if they have all yeses or all nos, they're either way too easy or way too hard. So somewhere in the middle, they kind of find their rhythm, and that's how the judging process goes. Really, if you're being nominated, the key thing to think about is you want to make the information about you and what you do as easy for the judges to find as possible. And so you want to package it in such a way, and you want to have letters of recommendation that support what you're saying or help explain your story. So you're really always trying to look at it from the judge's point of view, that they have a limited amount of time to look at the materials, and they want to get down to the facts right away. And then secondly, don't assume ever that just because you're very involved in a group that the judges will know what that is. So for example, I participate in the Fathers and Families Cookout on the board or on the steering committee at the Grub YMCA, and most of you probably don't know what that is. But I need to explain that. I need to explain how it raises money for the Fatherhood Initiative at the Y, and it teaches fathers that have been disconnected from their families how to reconnect with those people. So me telling even just 2 or 3 sentences of a story about what that group does, that's going to help you go a long way towards informing the judges, and then including how you impact the group as well. Those are kind of some of the things that you want it to be easy for them to understand. You're filling in the gaps that they might not know, and you're getting supporting documentation from people that would know the impact and the great things that you do.
So Jason, I know in the past we've talked about when you've done this at time to time, you've given some tips, some things that really help your application stand out. Do you have a couple things that you think would help that somebody really stand out to a judge?
Sure. Well, in the past, we've taken hard copy nominations. This year, we're not doing that. So I've always said that packaging doesn't matter. So somebody bringing in an empty wine crate filled with corks and confetti and stuff, it looked cool when they dropped it off, but it was really about what does that person actually do. This year, because of the restrictions with COVID and everything, we're going to be doing all electronic nominations. So you can't, I've had a hard copy book submitted before. All of those things are great, but if the content inside doesn't match up with the packaging, the judges will see right through it. So that would be number one, is follow the format. Number two is pick your letters of reference carefully. Last year, or maybe a couple of years ago, I had somebody that submitted like 60 letters of application. That's probably about 55 too many, because you got to remember, as you're turning the page, at some point, those all start to kind of run together. So you're looking for those impactful things from either people in the organizations that you're a part of, whether it's the company you work for or the nonprofits that you volunteer for or serve on the board that can help tell your story, or if there's somebody that's very well known in the community that you have a good professional or philanthropic relationship, that can help as well. But those are, really the thing. And I guess the last thing is be part of the process. You know yourself better than anybody else. So a lot of times people are like, well, so-and-so's nominating me and whatever. Well, they need your resume and they need a list of the things that you're involved in, and they need that explanation of what those groups do. And no one will ever know even if you nominate yourself. The only person who knows is the judges who saw it, and they're not going to say anything and they're not going to hold it against you. So it's great to have somebody that's, the president or CEO of your company or the head of, the biggest nonprofit in town nominates you. That's great, but they really need your help to flesh out, really who you are and what you do.
Jason, one thing that I remember from looking at some of the applications is a lot of times the applications, the letters of reference will come all from within the company that somebody works. And that's nice that you're well respected by your company, but that sometimes we'll forget that community aspect as well. And so thinking about the letters of reference, what oftentimes people are looking at is, are they respected in their company, and are they respected in a variety of places in the community? Right. And like Jason said before, it doesn't mean that you have to be in 15 different locations getting letters of recommendation from everything you're involved in. Oftentimes it matters more the type of impact that you're having, but think about how you might have some diversity within those letters.
Well, and I would say probably a perfect example of what Chris was talking about was someone that I happened to be friends with way back from high school, got nominated, and he didn't get it the first year. And he said, what did I do different? What do I need to do different? And I said, well, here's this small nonprofit that you're a part of. Tell me about what you do. And he said, well, I'm an accountant. And so I went in and I audited their books, and I was able to really find some efficiencies, and I helped save them some money and what they were doing. And it's like, well, that's the story. And so he told the story in like a cover letter of what he did, but then the executive director of the nonprofit backed the story up and talked about, well, Jim really did a great job, and we couldn't have, redone our financial portfolio without him. And so that was enough to take him from, hey, he looks like a qualified application, but he kind of looks like everybody else, to, wow, that person really made an impact on a group that couldn't have afforded to go out and have somebody, audit all their systems. So that's kind of the thing where it's not bragging because you did it. And so don't be afraid to really, don't oversell yourself, because there could be people that are also on the board with you that sees that application and they go, well, I'm not really sure that's what Chris Conetzkey did. But if it's the truth, put it out there and let people know that what you did really made an impact.
So Jason, I'm going to ask you for some mistakes maybe that you see folks make. And while I do that, if you guys have questions, I think we'll open it up for some questions. Kara, does that seem okay to open it up to the group here? So what I always tell folks is if you want to make sure to get your question answered, be the first brave person to ask the question. That's always the best way. So Jason, some maybe common mistakes that you see happening.
I would say common
or maybe
mistakes
missteps
are,
is a better way to describe
what
it.
did you say, missteps?
Yeah.
I would say the biggest missteps are somebody submits a laundry list of groups that they've had any involvement with no explanation about what they actually did there. They have no letters of reference, or if they do, they have one or two. They weren't part of the process, so maybe there isn't a up-to-date resume or a resume at all included. There's no kind of executive summary at the beginning that helps make, like, these are the key points within here. These are the things that we're looking for, and I'm going to address those right up front. I would say those are the biggest things. And then remember, get them in on time, because there's nothing worse than somebody totally forgets that it's due, and a week after we've already completed the judging, they're trying to get theirs slid in. So those are all key things. I think the not having the materials is the biggest thing, because you can't assume anybody knows who you are.
Looks like there's a question in here from Bree. Thanks, Bree, for being brave and asking the first one. She's asking, what's a good estimate for the amount of groups and boards someone should be participating in?
I don't think there's a minimum or maximum number. I think a lot of it's about time. So how much of a time commitment do you have with the things that you're doing? Like I said, some people have a list of 10 organizations that they sit on the board for, but it's a 1-hour meeting once a month. And that's their contribution, where somebody else is, like we talked about, they're auditing the accounting system and looking for efficiencies and saving the organization money. So I think that's kind of one way to look at it. I will say, if you only have one or two things, that probably will not be enough. So I think you need to be in that 3 to 5 range as a minimum. And that doesn't mean that you're the president of the board. It might be that you volunteer for Habitat for Humanity in Des Moines, or you're involved in some volunteer things that are still making a big impact.
I would also just chime in and say that it can be things from the past too. You don't have to still actively be involved in something. It could be something that you were involved in a few years back, or that you helped start. Those type of things are always really good things to include. I think one of the things that we hear from, we did a 20th anniversary for 40 Under 40 last, it feels like that was just last year, I guess, but it feels like a lot
this week.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things that we heard, and we've heard from past 40 Under 40 winners, is you ask them what would they do differently, and almost to a T, they say, I probably wouldn't have been involved in as many things. I would have tried to start diving into a couple of the areas that I was really passionate about. The ability for folks to say no is really hard, especially once they get involved in something to begin with. And so I want to make sure that we're not giving bad advice and saying go out and get on 5 different boards just for the sake of doing it. And everybody's going to give their time in a lot of different ways. And that's something else that we see from a lot of people is, like Jason said, some people, their best way to contribute is to be involved in lots of different boards and be a sounding board because they have access to different things. Other people are going to be hands-on, giving their time in a different way. And other folks are going to have monetary donations that they can be using. So it's going to look a little bit different for everybody. But I think thinking about ways that you're making sure that it aligns with that you're doing it for the right reason is always going to be more important. And that shines through when you're looking at the different resumes and seeing different people that win.
Well, and there's, we talk about nonprofits or whatever, but there is a time commitment and an impact on your community. And I'm a sucker for this, is, people that are giving their time to coach their kids' teams, for example, or they're involved in things like that, where it's, don't get too wrapped up in it has to be a nonprofit board. If you serve on we've had a lot of people that serve on the city council for different communities, or they're on the planning and zoning commission, or they treasurer at their church or whatever. There's a lot of different ways that we all make impacts into the communities that we're a part of that don't just fit in a little box. And so all of those things, I try to highlight those when I write the introductions for each of the 40 under 40. I try to find something that's interesting and unique that we can include in there. For example, last year, I don't know if anybody knows Corey Sharp, but we included about he's a drummer in a band. And so it's like, you know, that's not a nonprofit thing or whatever, but it's kind of an interesting thing that helps round out who he is.
Yeah, I would say that we have, when I looked even in the past 10 years since I've been looking at 40 under 40 stuff, I would say 10 years ago we had a lot of lawyers, a lot of your traditional corporate folks, and I think we've seen the definition of what 40 under 40 is really expand. And I think that's a reflection of the judges looking and seeing whether people have other hobbies and other interests that they're also participating in, and those things have a rich involvement in the community also. So Jason Van Engen, if I didn't get your name right, I'm sorry. He's asking, is there a difference between volunteering with a chamber versus a not-for-profit? For example, a member of a not-for-profit where there is no business benefit for my job, whereas a chamber may indirectly be leading to business.
Right. And for Catherine's benefit, if anybody wants to be a West Des Moines ambassador, that's a great thing to do. And that's another one of those things that helps show your involvement and round things out. I think what I would say is there's a difference between I'm a member of the West Des Moines Chamber and I'm trying to take a leadership role in some way or serving on a committee or whatever. And that's really true for a lot of, it doesn't matter what the organization is. You're just, if it's just, oh, I do this as opposed to I'm trying to be a leader in this, I think the leadership component is what puts you over the top. So if you're, and that's the other thing that we haven't even talked about is some of those professional development type things, like if you're a member of the West Des Moines Leadership Academy or the Greater Des Moines, the Greater Des Moines Partnerships or the Leadership Institute and things like that, or Leadership Iowa, those are all things that the judges seem to hold in high regard because they know the amount of time that it takes and it's an ongoing commitment. It's not a one-time thing where my company had a United Way work day and I volunteered for 2 hours, as opposed to I went out, I was making connections, I was learning how these organizations in the community work, and I was trying to better myself. There's a lot of people that have been through one or multiple of those programs that get selected. And a lot of that's because they've already raised their hand and said, I want to be involved, and they're stepping forward. So once you're in the Leadership Institute or you're doing the West Des Moines Leadership Academy, we talk about people looking to the 40 under 40 for board members. People are looking to those organizations to find volunteers and board members too.
I think
you can send the check later for that ambassador comment, Catherine. I'm glad she's on mute. We don't need to hear.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, your point on the other programs that you might have been involved in, again, it's like being pre-approved, right? So if I was already selected for another group where there had to be a bit of a selection process, that helps identify for a voter that for a judge that other folks also had your back at some point. So that can be a really valuable thing. And Jason, to your point, I think that would be one of the bigger pitfalls that we actually see, is that you'll see folks that have a background where they're involved in a lot of things related specifically to their job. And so a chamber could be one example, but if you're in real estate and development and you're going to get your continuing education credits as part of it, and you're putting that on the list, or you're getting different professional certificates, those things are nice, and they should be a part of the mix, but that's not the whole package. Again, I think you've probably heard, I think I've said the word, have a diverse perspective that you're bringing to the table in your nomination packet. That's always a well-rounded person is always going to look, is always going to stand out, I think, a little bit more.
Well, and that career achievement part of it is important too, is that, we assume that if somebody is getting nominated, they've attained a certain level of success in whatever their chosen field is. But I think, really being honest with yourself and going, okay, I've got a bunch of this nonprofit stuff, but do I have an equal balance, and vice versa? We don't want the president of a company who goes home every night and has a few drinks and goes to bed. That's not really who we're looking for. We're looking for that balance. So, being honest with whoever you're looking to nominate, or being honest with yourself, is important too, because, there's no rush. We've had, I think the youngest person we had was 25, but normally most people are between, early 30s up to 39. That's kind of the sweet spot, because you've had a chance to grow in your career and get some promotions, or maybe start a business or whatever. And then you've also had that time to, perhaps you're starting family, or perhaps it's given you time to actually work your way up to being on a board, so that, it's not a, well, if I don't check this off my list by the time I'm 30, it's just too late. Because, the reality is the majority of the people are in that 32 to 39 kind of range. And I would say probably the majority don't get it on the first try. There's a lot of people that come really close, and it takes 2 or 3 times, and then they finally have that one extra thing. And I wish I could tell you that here's what the one extra thing is, and this is what puts them over the top. But it's really, they've matured, they've continued to advance in their career, they've maybe added a couple other groups that they're involved with, or some interesting things, and that's finally enough. It's super competitive. I mean, there's 40 honorees and 200 nominees. So, the best day that I have is I call 40 people and tell them, really, it's us calling to say thank you for what you do to make Central Iowa a better place to live and work. But that means there's 160 people who a week later are going, I wonder why I didn't get a call, or I heard my friend Derek got a call, and I must not have made it. And so, it is, I guess what I'm saying is, don't give up, and just keep plugging away and doing what you're doing.
Two thoughts to build on with Jason there. One thing with your career is, it's great when your boss is telling everybody how great you are. It's even better when a client of yours is telling everybody how great you are. So think about somebody that maybe you've done a lot of work for, or that a different business that you maybe have worked with in some fashion. That's always a really good way to really round out what it looks like. And then Jason mentioned, that there's 200 folks each year, and that we do keep the nomination from year to year. I know people update it from time to time as well. Nominations from previous years continue to be used. Jason, do you have any other feedback on the way that we handle holdover nominations?
Yeah. So what we do, is we keep all the applications from one year to the next. But what I really do is, when we're starting the list of applicants for this year, probably the 40 that were the closest, they're the ones that get moved forward automatically and put into the mix. And so we have 30 to 40 good applications that, depending on who the judges were, or one year to the next, they might have been a 40 under 40 as opposed to number 45. And so we're moving those forward. I saw a question pop up, if I don't get it, who do I call and ask? And that would be me. And I can't always tell you, because what I'll tell you is, when the good thing about what I do is I organize the judges, but I don't have to judge. And judging is a really hard thing to do, because there are so many people that are truly, in my opinion, I look at the application, I go, well, they're really qualified. But I'm more than happy if somebody didn't get it. If you shoot me an email or give me a call, I will look at your materials and say, hey, here's what I would do different. That doesn't mean that I'm the be all end all, and that whatever I tell you should do will work. But I've seen enough of them, and then going through them after they've been selected, you can kind of see some commonalities between them. But I'm happy to talk to anybody that says, hey, I don't understand. Probably the most memorable one is, I had somebody, we used to send out letters to the people who didn't make it. And really what we found is that was like pouring salt in the wound. So we kind of stopped that. But I had a guy call me and say, I'm going to be 40 next year, so I don't qualify, but I'm going to be in the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Man of the Year competition, and I'm going to raise $200,000 just to prove it to you that I was deserving. And I said, great. And about 3 months later, I got an email from him and he said 225. And so, it was too bad that that person didn't get selected. But if the Leukemia Society got $225,000 because he was trying to prove to me that he was wrong, hey, I'll take it. That wasn't a great phone call to have, but that worked out pretty well for the organization in the end.
Looks like there's a couple procedural type ones in here. One is from Mackenzie, and she's asking about who do you see nominating nominees most often? Bosses, managers, colleagues, or more community involvement connections?
The answer to that is yes. There isn't really a right or wrong answer. I would say it is. We have probably 10 or 15%, maybe a little more, that self-nominate. And then there's another group that it's somebody in their family, either their spouse or we've had parents nominate somebody. And then it's probably an even split between the three different groups, where it's a colleague at work, it's your boss, or it's somebody from a nonprofit or who's influential in the community. So there's really no right or wrong answer. I will tell you, probably of everything that you submit, the least important line on the application is who nominated you. Because I would say it would be better if and I pick on Catherine because I know Catherine, but if Catherine was going to nominate somebody, it would be better for her to write a really great letter of reference to go with her name being on the form, as opposed to just putting her name on the form and having us go, well, Catherine said, so it must be fine. Catherine's words about who you are and what you do are going to carry a lot more weight than just her name. Does that answer the question?
Another question here from Adam. He's asking, are there any rules about getting a letter of reference from a previous honoree since they are potential judges?
Previous honorees write letters of reference all the time. And a lot of times they even reference that they're a past 40 under 40. So they're basically saying, hey, I know what it takes, and this person has what it takes. The one thing I would say about the judging is we keep it purposely anonymous. And so there's a good chance that somebody is going to be looking at your information. And we trust that they're going to be as fair as possible. We do keep it so if somebody's spouse was a 40 under 40 and now the husband is up for the honor, we make sure that the wife doesn't have to judge the husband, because that seems like it would be a recipe for disaster for everybody. But we've had before where somebody came and said, hey, one of these is one of my best friends. And I said, do you think they deserve it? And the guy said, well, completely off the record, no. And I said, well, then you're the perfect judge. You can do this. And so you'll never know who looked at your applications unless they tell you. So having somebody write a letter for you is perfectly fine. That was a past honoree. In fact, that's very common.
I would say that, having it's kind of what it's not about who you know necessarily. And that's not the way that the judging actually works. But the reality is, the bigger effect that you're having in the community, the more people that you're interacting with, the more boards and the more things that you're involved in, or the more impact that you're having, the greater the chances that a judge will see your name and know who you and be able to associate that with you. And associate what your work is like. And so I think that's where part of it can get kind of blurry, going, well, it's just who you know. Well, it's not exactly like that. It's not that somebody's picking you so you can belong to the club, right?
Well, and truthfully, we mentioned at the beginning that we offer up a chance to be a judge for all the past honorees. And that's really part of the reason that we switched to that, because otherwise you have a group that's, they're generally in their 30s and they're generally involved in these things. And then the next year they know a whole bunch of the people that are being nominated. And so then it becomes really easy to have it be just what Chris was saying. It's all about who you know, or you're kind of part of that group, so you get selected. You have people in all different places in their life that are judging now, and somebody who's 60 years old is going to look at the application of somebody who's 30 and what they're doing and remember back to what they were doing, but they may not have a direct connection to you, and that's good, because we want them to be judging based on the merits of what you do. and not, oh yeah, that's a really great guy. Well, you'd hope that everybody who gets selected is a really great person, but they're supposed to be judging on achievement. And so that's the biggest thing. It's not a personality or popularity contest. It's really truly about, are you successful in your career and are you making an impact on the community?
Catherine and Kara, I just want to check on time and see how we're doing there.
We are good. I have one more question, and then anybody else from the audience, if you have any final questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. But out of curiosity, let's say someone is applying in their late 30s. Yep. And they just found out about it. Maybe they just moved to town, and maybe they accomplished a lot of things 5 or 10 years ago. Is there a certain time frame of things that you should be including on there? Kind of like your resume, you move things off as you continue to gain accomplishments. Is there any rules like that?
There's not really any hard and fast rules. I would say, if it is something that you did in the past, make sure it's noted with the date, the years or whatever, because we don't want to paint a false picture that you're involved in these 20 things right now where you probably have 4 or 5 things, but you did a lot in the past. We've had people that moved into the community that got nominated that had been very active in the community they came from. So they had a lot of different things that were not experiences that somebody who lived their whole life in Central Iowa would have. I will say it does tend to lean towards the impact that you make in Central Iowa. But if you're looking back and saying, well, 5 years ago, I lived in the Quad Cities and I was part of these 5 things there, that still helps show like a pattern of behavior, that you're somebody who contributes and makes a difference. The one thing when you said about somebody in their late 30s, where I thought you were going to go is, hopefully when the judges are done voting, we have a nice, neat number and it cuts off right at 40. But the reality is that there's usually 5 people for the last 2 spots or whatever. So the one time I do get involved is if you're 39, you're going to get preference over somebody who has more years to be nominated if you're in that tie for one of the last spots, because it would be shameful to miss out on somebody that was tied for the last spot because they're about to turn 40. So that's the one time that I have really any input at all, but otherwise it's tallying the votes and kind of doing the admin part of it and not trying to influence the judges in any way.
And I would say just on top of that is that 40 under 40, it's nice that and you get to call yourself a 40 under 40 after that. But we have folks that move to the community all the time in their late 30s that start making a great impact, and then they become part of news stories, right? And so because of the things that they're actually doing in the community, and an honor is nice, but there's a lot of other ways to get some recognition too for the hard work that you're doing. And so even if it doesn't result in 40 under 40 right away, there's always other avenues to be doing that, and it shouldn't be about the award anyways. But there are other ways that we're able to help elevate folks in the community and help make sure that people know about great resources and assets in the community. Because there's one thing that I think that even despite COVID, people are looking for talent in so many different ways and so many different organizations. And so it's in high demand and high need, and people find, and especially in this community, they find people with talent real quick.
I saw a question that popped in about when do you have to be under 40 to be considered for 40 under 40? And the answer is it's at the time of the event. And this year the event is in early April. So you need to be under the age of 40 just to be safe. By what's the date of the event, Chris?
I believe we have it set for April 8th. I should know that. That's my birthday, so I think that is correct.
That'll be a great spot to spend your birthday. But under 40 on the day of the event is the rule.
And this past year was in July because we were supposed to be in April, but there was a little pandemic that happened.
So we actually had a couple of people that had turned 40 between April 1st, and we were supposed to have the event, and July, 21st, when we did have the event. So that might be the first time that we had some actual 40-year-olds that got the honor, but we try to avoid that if we can. So make sure you fill out that birthday line. That's another disqualifier. If I don't know if you're under 40 or not, that's hard to put somebody through. And we try to follow up on that stuff, but it gets a little hectic. Oh, I would say the one other thing you could do to make yourself stand out, and this is more of a standout to me and not to the judges, is we get 200 applications and like 100 to 120 of them come in the last 24 hours. You've got like 6 or 7 weeks to submit it. You don't have to wait until January 7th to fill it out. And if it cuts off at noon, I get like 30 or 40 in the last hour. Man, you've had 7 weeks. You know, you can do it. Get it in early.
Another question in there about social media and personal brand taken into consideration, or do you see that being a factor in the future? I think it already is. You know, if somebody is recognizable in the community because of the things they're doing, I don't think it's necessary that somebody's going to go, oh, they should be 40 under 40 because they have a a following, or because they're active on social media. But I think that helps again with 40 under 40 in a lot of ways is a brand. You're
Right.
being selected based on your brand, right? And your brand is being displayed in terms of your resumes or the things that you've done in the community. And so social media is certainly a part of that. And so if you're active in the community and you're an active voice and you have influence in that way, influence takes a lot of different shapes. And so I think those are some of the things. Now, what I'm not sure that I've seen, and Jason, maybe you would know better, is if I'm not sure that we ask for how many followers somebody has or what their Instagram account looks like, but
No, but I do
maybe
think
in the
there
future
have
we
been,
will.
I think there have been, and I can't confirm this for sure, but I'm pretty sure there have been a couple judges that if they weren't sure about somebody, they would Google them. And if they found them on social media, they would just take a quick look. And so it's just like everything else. We're all really smart about this now. We never put anything out there that would be embarrassing down the road, but it is one of those things. If somebody doesn't know who you are at all, they might go, oh, well, this is Chris Conetzkey. So it's just another resource. We don't encourage that. This isn't supposed to be, we're not doing an in-depth background check on people. Our goal is not to have somebody that 5 or 10 years down the road gets arrested for a felony or embezzling money from their company. We want good, upstanding citizens, but we've never had a problem just by trusting what's on the paper or on the form.
Awesome. All right. I don't think I see any other questions in the chat. Let's give them a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, Chris and Jason.